Hey, I am Dr. Wen Sams. I am running for president as a write-in. Um, if you didn't see the first slide, but what I like to do is I just like to bring everybody the truth. That's how I work. That's what I'm about. And there's just a lot of things that slides under the radar that we don't know that especially in this day and time, I think it's important to be aware of. There are just a lot of questions everyone's asking. There's a lot of things that we don't understand. And I like to look at facts. I like to look at what is written because that's what we have to deal with. It's not an opinion piece. This is fact. So what I'm going to show you today is the CARES Act that was passed in March and the origin of that, kind of a history of it, as well as other things that I found along the way that are even more interesting. I swear, every time I start into this, I always find something and it just leads me to the next thing and to the next thing. And even if you don't agree with, won't support me as running for president, take home what I say because you need to know this. It's not about me tooting my horn or trying to get the word out or getting your support. I just care. And I think that everybody needs to know. So let's go ahead and get started with this. Okay. So, all right. The CARES Act actually started out as HR 748. It was introduced in January of last year, passed in the House in July, and then it just sat there until it was picked up again March 25th of this year and turned into the CARES Act. So what's interesting is HR 748 has nothing to do with really anything that the CARES Act is about. Now, my background is I have written and helped pass many bills in different states. And what I have realized is easy for a bill to be amended, but you have to have verbiage that is germane to the bill. So in other words, I can't just ask for an amendment of my language to a bill that has nothing to do with what my intent of my bill is about. So with that in mind, HR 748 is about an excise tax. It's about an excise tax that was implemented through the Affordable Care Act, and this bill is saying let's get rid of it. And what it basically says, or the way that it was worded, is that corporations have an extra tax placed on them at 40% for employee health programs. And this bill says let's get rid of that and encourage health providers to not have to pay the tax. And the whole idea, and this is what's interesting, because it doesn't hold any accountability of it being actually implemented, which is always my problem. We've got to have accountability. We can't just define things and leave out the details of how we're going to carry this out. So the way that excise tax worked is if you did away with it, it was hopefully going to encourage employers to, since they wouldn't have to pay that tax, to then pass it over to their employees with higher pay. And then, of course, the employees get taxed. So the employees are going to get taxed as opposed to the corporations. And that's a whole nother can of worms that a lot of people would like to talk about. But that's the only connection that I can see of HR 748 having any language germane possibly to the CARES Act bill, where it is at least talking about corporations and it's talking about being taxed. That's the only thing I can get. So this is on July 17th when it was passed over to the Senate. This is all the discussion. There's a congressional dialogue with every bill. So here's the one when HR 748 became the CARES Act, but there's nothing. I can click on each one of these just randomly, and there is nothing. So I'm not sure what happened to this particular day, but that dialogue is not being shared for public, so for public to see. All right, so here we go. So here's only thing I could find on March 25th. Senator McConnell proposed an amendment to HR 748, which is really interesting because it doesn't need to be. So in other words, they took HR 748 and they amended it to be the CARES Act. So that's how they did that. And they just, they said, all right, we're going to include or repeal the excise tax. It's going to be changed to the Internal Revenue Code. And that's that. But there's something even more interesting, as I'm going to get to later, because the excess tax was already repealed December 2019 in a different bill. So there's no reason for them to even have this in here because it was already repealed in a prior bill. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so they go on and talk about the CARES Act, because here's where they say the Middle Class Health Benefits Tax Repeal Act of 2019. That's what it's called now. They changed names, but that's it. That's it. They didn't, it has nothing to do with repealing the excise tax at this point. It's the CARES Act. So this is in March, remember? So they've picked it back up in March and made it the CARES Act. What I wanted to show you, though, was really interesting because this particular paragraph I thought to be fascinating. He goes, and then suddenly it has become this whole transition into the most random of things. Well, if a corporation gets a loan from the federal government, then someone here in Washington, D.C. should determine how that corporation is run. We should have a member on their board or a union representative on their board. We should have some kind of stake in their board to do that. This was my favorite one. We should be able to tell the board if they are considering layoffs. Someone here in DC should be able to go to the company, evaluate the rest of their portfolio, and tell them other ways that they can do their business besides laying people off. Are you kidding me? We are now going to create a whole new federal bureaucracy that goes to every company, and if they take out a loan in this program, they're still able to tell them how to manage the day-to-day operations of their company. So I thought that was very interesting because we don't know as lay people what they discuss. They have no idea. I mean, we have no idea. But I just thought that was very fascinating. Someone actually thought, okay, well, that's accountability to them. We're going to rule the roost here. I don't think it has to be that way. So let's look again a little bit at it's called the Cadillac tax, that middle class health excise tax. So again, like I said, it was a part of the ACA, and it basically says that it's there to help companies. And by removing it, companies have more money. They don't have to pay the tax. And it's supposed to help, it says, employees, but I don't think so, because the way that it works is that now they offer, they don't have to pay any taxes. That's supposed to be passed on to the employees, but the employees are getting taxed at a higher rate, and they get a lesser coverage. So that's how it works. this is another, this has been around for a while. I included this so that you could see that Congressman Courtney is the one who introduced HR 748, as you can see. See, where is he? There he is. And so he tried in 2015 to introduce this bill, and it died. So you can see it didn't make it. But somehow, he must have a lot of persistence, which I admire. It came back up and it was introduced in January. It makes me think that it was a placeholder bill. And what I mean by that is that I just don't think Congress doesn't know or have a plan, perhaps, as I'm going to show you, of things to come. Maybe not everybody, but certain people do, as you can see. And so you have to have the particular foundations to keep moving forward. And if you already have bills that have been introduced, then you can change the names and redo the language. Like I said, supposedly it's supposed to always be germane to the original bill, but in this, I just don't see it. So here's what's interesting. So Trump signed December 20th of 2019 a bill, HR 1865, that repealed that tax. Oh my goodness. That's interesting, isn't it? Because that was the whole purpose of including it in the CARES Act, was it not? Way back here, where it says that they're repealing the excise tax. But that's March 25th, 2020. Why would they need to do that if it's already been repealed December 19th of 2019? So, as I do, I always ask questions, and of course I found more than I really wanted to know. But here is HR 1865, which is what Trump signed in 2019. Okay, so this is where it gets really fascinating, and you have to bear with me because this is a long bill. They seem to love long bills. And just, you're going to have to, like I said, because I'm going to have to scroll kind of up and down, and just bear with me because I've got my notes, but I just have to find the right page. Okay, here is something that I want you to pay attention to. State unemployment insurance and employment service operations. So this is money that is being allocated. Now remember, this was passed in 2019, December 2019. We don't have a coronavirus yet, okay? But these are monies that are allocated for different needs. And that's good. We need that. Okay. So look at this though. These funds are allocated from December 31st, 2020 to September 30th, 2022. But here it says specifically through September 30th, 2021. So, all right, let me just back up. Funds used for unemployment insurance workloads experienced through September 30th, 2020. Shall be available for federal obligation through December 31st, 2020. That is what I want you to pay attention to. There are particular funds that have been allocated for increased workload of unemployment between September 30th, 2020 and December 31st, 2020. Now that's kind of interesting, don't you think? Because that is this year. Are we not experiencing increased unemployment workloads? Yes. Do we have a lot of unemployment insurance? Yes. So I wonder how they knew. Bill was introduced actually in March of 2019 and was passed in December of 2019. So how did they know? Let's see if there's anything else. Yeah. Okay. So this is talking about helping states that have suffered a major disaster under the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief or the Emergency Resistance Act or Assistance Act. Well, that would apply, would it not? Of what we're going through right now. Okay, here we go again. I'm gonna 715 pages. Okay. All right, so these are again funds for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And I think it's interesting that Trump has said, we're not giving any more money to the CDC. Well, okay, but you've already given them money. You've already allocated all these funds and more. So it looks really good to say we're not going to fund them, but we've already gotten to law where places that already covers that. So you really have to be careful with how things are worded and say, oh, that sounds great. You have to look a little further and then things start to add up. All right, so again, this is saying for the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program Trust Fund that that still is going to be funded. Then I found this to be interesting. You have the immunization and respiratory diseases. There's this amount allocated to that. Gets even better. Ooh, emerging and zoonotic infectious diseases. Now, why would you want to put that in there? This amount to address emerging and zoonotic infectious diseases. Then keep going, keep going. This, of course, is for global disease detection and emergency response. And I just always find they always put in here something about being able to buy motor vehicles in foreign countries. Guess they really, if you want to outline the details, that's how you do it, right? All right. So here is another interesting thing. Respect to public health preparedness and response, and for expenses necessary to support activities related to countering potential biological, nuclear, radiological, and chemical threats to civilian populations. Maybe that's what we're going through right now. Maybe this is all a preparedness thing. So you can see that a lot of what we're going through right now funds were allocated last year. So they had to prepare somehow. Now, here is the thing that got my attention. All right. Public Health and Social Services Emergency Fund. So see, there are all these funds, guys. This just isn't A great idea. Somebody was preparing. Again, they talk about for expenses necessary to support activities related to countering potential biological, nuclear, radiological, chemical, and cyber security threats to civilian populations and for other public health emergencies. There's a lot of money that has been allocated. So we got to make sure that that's taken care of. Also, here is the Strategic National Stockpile. Okay, so we all know about that. And to support emergency operations shall remain available through September 30th, 2022. Now, this is what is really interesting. Influenza pandemic. Why? Why do they want to be prepared for that? And then including the development and purchase of vaccine, antivirals, necessary medical supplies, diagnostics, and other surveillance tools. Again, I'm doing a whole other video on the other surveillance tools. It's already been defined, folks. This isn't about party. How many times do I have to say this? This isn't about voting someone in who will represent your party. Your parties voted for this. They know about this. This isn't about, they're not supporting people. They're supporting causes. They're supporting other things than how it's going to affect us. Now, maybe in their minds, this is doing us a favor because we need to prepare for potential, issues that might arrive, and we need to know how everybody's going to react and how we need to put our energies and how to move things around. And it's like a exercise so that we all know what it feels like. But you know what? We get left out of the memo that says, hey, you guys, we're having a test here. So I'm real sorry if your aunt commits suicide, or I'm real sorry that someone in your family goes hungry and dies. Real sorry about that. This is much, much more important because we've got to know how to work. So just remember that. And if that really bothers you, you got to understand we can't get them out of office unless you vote them out. They cannot be removed. They can't be arrested because they are breaking the law. They are breaking the law. But they can't be arrested except for treason, felony, and breach of the peace. That's it. Anything else? Mm-mm. So you have to understand that that's what we're dealing with. The CARES Act has a history. You have to understand how things come about. You also have to understand that there's a lot of things that aren't quite honest that goes on in our government. My question to you is, why do you put up with it? Why is that okay? Why do you keep voting the same corrupt system to get the same kind of corrupt people who are going to do the same corrupt kind of thing and expect a different outcome? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. But I hope that you'll start seeing that the only way to heal this is for you to make different choices. You've got to vote differently. You got to be willing to separate from the popular crowd, because the popular crowd right now isn't helping us, and start something new and vote someone in or people in who truly live and care about the same things as you do. It makes no difference, for example, if someone is incredibly passionate about medical autonomy And you want to keep someone in office who says they are too, but then does things like this. Or someone in Congress who might say the same things. And that's one issue. And the rest of the issues aren't important because all you care about is that one issue. It's not okay. So please take this to heart. I'll be doing more videos as we go that show, again, more hidden things so you can be aware that this isn't just a one-time fluke. It happens all the time. And you would never know about it unless you are in the system of being a part of the legislative process. I'm so grateful that I've been given the opportunity to be someone who can be on the other end of introducing and helping to pass legislation, because you see a lot of how things work. And that's why this doesn't surprise me. But for people who don't know, then they take advantage of that. So again, thank you for your time. And until next time, have a great day.